evening, everyone. This is the November 13th public meeting of the Berners Township Board of Education. We've already had our salute to the flag. So, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Here. Dr. Dungeon?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mr. Fry? Here. Mrs. Corn?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mrs. McHugh?
Here.
Mrs. Wolford?
Here.
Karen? Here. Mr. Sy? Here. Madam President? Madam Vice President?
Yes.
Voice
Okay.
and habit.
I wanted to call your attention to the statement of public notice. There are copies of the agenda on the stage tonight if anyone would like one. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I wanted to mention that there are 2 times during the meeting that the public is invited to speak. One time is early in the meeting on agenda items, and then there is another public comment session towards the end of the meeting where you can speak on any topic that you choose. And please keep your comments to 5 minutes. Okay, so now we're up to the student representative.
Hello, everybody. Today marked the beginning of the second marking period. We had, I think, a really great first quarter of the year. We worked really hard, and we had a much-needed rest last week. We got a couple days off in the end, and that was definitely great. And now we're ready to start for the rest of the year. And it's really kind of a sad but exciting time now with fall sports coming up. Our football season just ended last week, but we got a couple of teams still going really strong. The girls soccer team won their sections last Thursday against Westfield. And they got a really big game tomorrow against Morris Knowles, and a lot of people are going right out to support them there, so that's really good. The whole student body is really excited about all that. We also have girls volleyball who are doing incredible. They're undefeated this year, and they've just won their states, and they're heading into the TOC, and they have that this weekend, so everyone's really rallying around both of those teams right now. There's not really all that much else going on in the school right now. It's kind of a weird time with everything finishing up, but everyone's really excited about that, and we are ready to keep going strong this year.
Does anyone have any questions? Well, thank you very much, and you are welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go home. Okay, for the next 2 agenda items, I'd like the Board of Ed members to go into the audience. We have some student recognition and then a presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nick Harker, and I'm the superintendent. And we just heard from R.J. Milligan, our student rep, and he was kind of bragging on the high school and some of the athletic accomplishments, and that's, of course, terrific, and we're really excited. I'm going to see if I can get to that Morris Knowles game. If you can get out there tomorrow, that would be awesome to see the girls soccer. But, you know, before they get to the high school, they go to the middle school. And so we're very fortunate tonight to have with us Rita Zarabera. She's our William Anna Middle School Athletic Coordinator, and she's going to talk to us about some of the accomplishments of our middle school students. So congratulations to our middle school students, and thank you all for coming out to support them. Rita.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And I just want to say that we did have a terrific fall season at William Anna. Almost all of our teams just were terrifically successful. We had a boys soccer team that lost in penalty kicks in a semifinal. We had a field hockey team that had their most successful season ever, going to a semifinal and losing by 1 goal. We had a girls soccer team that made it to the championship game and lost in penalty kicks. And we had a few champions. And so tonight we're going to honor the champions that are here with us and they are girls volleyball, and 1 student in our cross-country program. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kevin Parch, who's the head coach of our cross-country.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about Jackson Barnum. He is the student that we're recognizing today. However, I also want to mention the rest of the team as well, because as the season started out at the beginning of this year, we didn't know where we were going to end up. Last year we were undefeated and the kids won, the boys won the conference championship. Jackson was a big part of that team. We knew where he was going to be. He's a hard worker, he's focused. But then as this season started out, we started to see they were really putting it together, and Jackson was leading the pack. And it was great because we went to the conference meet and they took 2nd place in the conference. Jackson ran 10:26 on that day, and that was for 3K, which was a mile .86. And then the following Saturday, only a few days away, he won the state championship with 10:02. So he really cut that time down, 10:26, 10:02. So he is the conference champion, he is the state champion for middle school cross country. And so it's a lot. I want to wish him the best of luck as he continues his running career at the high school, because we have a boy right now who made it to Meet the Champions, Patrick Bayou. He'll be there on Saturday. We have a girls team that made it to Meet the Champions for the 3rd year in a row, and they're going to be competing on Saturday too. So we look forward to seeing what he's going to do at the high school as well.
Just to add to that, Jackson is the first state champion we've ever had at William Manor. Okay, so not to be outdone, but we have a girls volleyball team that had a terrific season, and they captured our league championship. We play in the Central Jersey Junior School Athletic Association. And we've had a great season, and I'm going to introduce Rich Pickrell, who's our girls coach.
Prepared a little statement, because I don't want to forget any of their names, and we have a big team. So, good evening, everybody. Winning the league championship has been the highlight of my 3-year tenure with the program, and directly related to the hard work of all 20 of our dedicated players. I'd like to give special thanks to our awesome team parents. I'm not sure if any of them are here, but they came to all of our matches wherever they were. We had a bus that they had to coordinate getting all the kids to the matches, the away matches. And we had to carpool on the way home. And we tend to travel quite a bit, so we were all over the place. They sponsored our end of the year party at the school, and we had a nice little practice and parent-player game at the end, which was kind of fun. So I really put it out there to our parents. They've been awesome. I want to mention our assistant coach, Simon Moeller. Simon volunteered to us this year. He's a junior at Ridge High School, and he playing on the varsity, which is awesome. I think he helped us out quite a bit. With 20 kids on 2 courts, it really takes 2 of us to really train the team really well. So it's been awesome. Let's see, what else do we have? Tell you about a little bit about the season. We started off, we won, we lost, we won a bit, we lost, so we ended up 5-3, and then we ended up 3rd seeded into the tournament, and we had to beat the team that had already beaten us once, and we did that. So we improved throughout the season. We had a lot of 7th graders on the team, which is and we had some kids that had played on the JV team for most of the season, and Anna came through for us at the end, and was our serving champion, and got us a lot of points in the semis and the finals. so that was fantastic. We played the only team that was undefeated in the conference in the finals, and they beat us twice. So, you know, sure everybody was a little, I don't know if we can take this lead, but they had a lot of confidence going into it because we beat Matino, we had lost it in the semis, and they got into the finals, which we hadn't been in. Yeah, and you know, we went 3 sets. We lost the first and won the second. So I think we had a little momentum going in there into the final set, and we beat the team that was undefeated. And the nice thing about that third set was it was the largest difference in the score. We won by 10 points, and all the other sets that we played were pretty close. We won 25-15, and we made hardly any errors, which is fantastic, right? Yeah. So it was pretty exciting for us. So you know, thanks to Rita too, because we had some problems with volleyballs, and we had to get more, and we had a problem with the net, and we had to get a new net. So all that stuff came through like immediately, and that really helps a lot. So anyway, we need to honor everybody. So let's start. I kind of, it's a random order, but I kind of put it in like varsity and JV order. Okay. Yeah, I didn't put it in. Okay, Chelsea Tangretti was our team. Carly Cambria. Taylor McLaughlin. Sophia Holmquist. Sophia Metzner. Eliana Marcus. Joey Peacock. Alana Johnson. Emily Wu. Karina Yang. Anna Kadmawala. Julia Amakoni. Abby Schway, sorry, Abby. Karen Lee. Shelby Kaiser. Berkeley Burrow. Sophie Fleischer. And Charlie Holman. So, Simon Mole. So as you can see, we had quite a group, which was awesome. It would have been nice if we had 3 courts and 3 coaches. We could have had more players. We had quite a turnout for tryouts, so this was awesome this year. Congratulations, everyone.
Okay, I think the smiles might get stuck. Congratulations. Great job, girls. It's really wonderful. Thanks for coming out tonight, you guys. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the meeting, but if you have homework to do, we understand if you have other things you want to do. At this point, we're going to transition a little bit to a presentation. Our school business administrator, Mr. Rod McLaughlin, has assembled a presentation for this evening related to self-insurance for our health benefit program. So we'll give a minute here for things to settle down and for Mr. McLaughlin to get set up, and we'll move right along to the next segment of our meeting. Thank you.
I told him to make sure he was appropriately dressed.
So just a brief bit of background before we get started. Over a year ago, our risk management firm, J. Lawton, that firm is one of the primary members of the Gallagher group that works with the district, talked with the board a little bit about self-insurance. And self-insurance is really to be thought of as kind of a funding concept, and hopefully that'll become a little bit clearer this evening with the presentation we have. And we did some preliminary discussions about it, and several months ago, the board asked for a more formal presentation to be prepared by the analytics group at Arthur Gallagher. And they came in with the presentation that you see dated here October 8th last month. They made that presentation to the Finance Committee of the board. It was reported out by the Finance Committee to the full board at the last meeting, and we felt that given the magnitude of the undertaking here, that it would be appropriate to have a full board presentation this evening. With that, we have three representatives from Arthur Gallagher here tonight. I'm going to ask them to come on down so that I can introduce them to the gentleman, please. We have Mr. Joseph Colombo first. He's the area vice president. We have Chris DiOrio, who is the consulting actuary. And we have Ron Lambert, who is the benefits team leader here to make this presentation. Who wants to go first? Because I'll basically hand over the mic. Be careful. The wires may want to come around this way. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to be tricked. That's fine.
About a year ago, we started looking at the plans and trying to see what was best for self-insurance versus being fully insured. We then proceeded to carriers, and we chose which carriers are best, but we wanted to bring in someone from our healthcare analytics team who was able to do a study and actually give us the pros and cons of being self-insured versus Chris Diorio is from our principal office.
Hi everyone. So I'm the nerd. I did all the math. I'll get us started. So just on the basics, I mean, the outline of this presentation is basically showing you what the pros and cons are. And we'll just go over some details. Some of them may be relevant, some not as much. But I think for the majority of the presentation, just I'll try to use terms that are a little bit more layman, because sometimes these insurance terms are, ridiculous and hard to understand. So I'll get started. So basically, this is the landscape right now of which groups are self-insuring. So you fall in the 200 to 999 employee base group. And so roughly 50% of employers right now are self-insuring. And you can see as you go up in numbers, in employee count, it makes more and more sense to self-insure your business or your insurance. And the reason for that is just because the more people you have, the more risk you can take, because you're collecting more premiums, and there's less chance that you'll have some big hitters on your health insurance plan. So as we said, 50% is roughly the landscape right now. This is produced by Kaiser. They're an insurer themselves, and this is the most recent that they've published, so 2016. And we do expect a little bit more of an uptick as of late, just because a lot of employers are trying to save a little bit of extra money. And the ones that usually won't, or maybe ones that know they have some chronic claimants, let's say, that are costing them a lot. And that could just be dependent on industry, it could be dependent on just what type of occupation it is. So we'll go over a little bit more of those details as well in future slides. And if anyone has any questions, by the way, feel free to raise your hand and ask me during the presentation. So some key considerations here. I'm just going to go over the basics of self-insurance versus fully insured. Your group actually has gone through minimum premium, which is kind of like a little bit of a hybrid being self-insured. So you might have some idea of what's gone on in the past, but let me just go over here basically what happens when you go self-insured. So when you're fully insured, the carrier or the insurer takes on all the risk. They're just going to give you a dollar amount per month and say this is how much it costs per employee, and they will handle any large claims that come in. And what they do when they do that is they build in kind of more profit, and they also they get information or claims information in real time, but they don't report it to you until a few months later. So they have to make these kind of estimates when they're reporting you how much your claims are for your medical plans. And I'll talk about this a little bit later too, but sometimes there's a little bit of finagling in there. So we'll go over that. But anyway, so in fully insured, they take on the risk. Self-insured, it now becomes your risk. So all the claims that you pay out come out of your bank account, right, as the employer. Now, there are ways to prevent that. One of them is to get reinsurance. So if you feel like you're going to have a bunch of large claimants come in with chronic condition, usually what most employers around this group size do is they'll get some reinsurance. Let's say they'll get a $200,000 level and say, we'll pay up to $200,000 worth of claims, and then the reinsurer will take the rest. So it's basically insurance on top of insurance. And that's the way that most self-insured employers cover their own grounds. They'll get reinsurance. So don't be scared by that. There's always large claimants. There could be 1, 2, 5. It depends on, as I said, the average age of the group and many other factors. So who's responsible for claims upon termination of the plan? If you're fully insured, the insurer will do that. So I'm sure I'll give you an example. When you go to the doctor, you get the bill, 3 months later, 4 months later sometimes. So what that's called is run out. And basically, if you were to terminate your plan right now, the insurer would be responsible for those claims next month, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, or 4 months from now when the last claim is paid. In the self-insured case, you would now be responsible for that. So it's just saying that the trickle-down effect of longer payment times needs to be accounted by now you. And that's actually why most groups that go self-insured create a reserve. So in the fully insured case, you don't need reserves because the insurer is taking care of everything. They have their own reserves built in. But in the self-insured case, you now need to set aside a certain dollar amount just to make sure that you have enough to pay off those remainder claims that are coming in. So that's one difference. Cash flow. So as I said before, it's very fixed with insurance, fully insured. With self-insured, you never know what claims are going to come in during the month. So you might have to chalk up less or more in the initial period. So normally what happens when you first transition to self-insurance, you're going to have some really small claims in the first few months. And the reason is because, as I said, there's payment delay time. So it'll catch up to you on the tail end. So that's another difference. And then what are the cost components? I'm in that big box now, if everyone can see. The cost components in fully insured component, it's just telling you what is the premium made up of. So it's incurred claims, meaning just claims that you've had, service. And then there's pooling charges. So it's kind of the insurer's reinsurance. State taxes, Corey fees, so PACA fees. If everyone is familiar with the ACA at this point, I'm sure. Risk charge, profit margin. So these are things that the insurer can take on top of just the standard claims because, you know, they're a business too. They're trying to make some profit, so they might put 1.5% to 3% as a profit margin. So now by going self-insured, you can see that the amount of things you're paying are much smaller. Instead of doing incurred claims, you're doing paid claims. That means that you're paying it out as it's coming in right now. So that's why I said it's very small in the beginning. It gets up to a normal range, and then there's that tail end. Expenses. So there still will be an administrative component. You still have to pay possibly a carrier to just administer the claims because they have complex systems of paying them. And so now your group will have to do that. But that's a very fixed fee. It's not usually very volatile. They'll probably do between $40 or $50 per employee, maybe even less if the carrier gives you a break. But basically, that's a fixed charge. That's always going to be there. And then you can see what's missing here, though, is state taxes. That's a big piece. That could be between 2 and 3%. So you're saving right off the bat about that much by going self-insured. Some of the ACA fees you can see are missing. The health insurer tax fee, actually, there's a fee that was suspended in 2017, and we thought it was going to go away in 2018, but guess what? It's back. So that could be an additional 1.5% of your claims, and that's a pretty big number. So next, you can see under self-insurance, there's specific stop loss, aggregate stop loss. Those things are the reinsurance that I was talking about before. So what those are dollar amounts to just make sure that a bunch of people don't make you go bankrupt. So those are standard ranges, and what we do as your broker is we'll try to negotiate down and get you a good rate and set you an appropriate level. So whether it be $250,000 or $300,000, and you know, as an actuary, that's our job to make sure that you've taken enough risk tolerance to not have those huge claims effect. And last of all, fluctuation margin. So you have the option to build a little bit of an extra percentage in there in case you want to bring in more revenue to maybe lower the premiums next year or keep it flat next year. So you just have more, for lack of a better word, flexibility. Yeah. So, getting over a cold right now. So that's the great thing about going self-insured is that you have a lot more flexibility in the space. And there's also who controls the plan design here. So under fully insured arrangement, you're required to have a specific plan design. There's certain mandates where you have to have minimum essential coverage, and it requires you to cover things that maybe you don't need to cover. So under self-insured, you have the ability to now offer things that maybe are more tailored toward your population, or take away some benefits that are unnecessary. Who's responsible for ACA reporting? The carrier is. Now you're going to have to do it, so it's just a little bit more of an administrative burden, but I think it's well worth it in the end. who's the plan fiduciary? So the carrier is fiduciary, meaning, if there was any litigation against you, like let's say you're paying the claims now, let's say you withheld a claim for something that was maybe ineligible, people can come back and try to sue you for it. So now you're responsible for the litigation. And I mean, we have staff attorneys and all for that as well, so.
And we can be carrier fiduciary as well.
That is true, yeah, the carrier can be that, so it could be off your hands as well. And then when it comes to banking, just obviously the carrier is paying for it. In the fully insured case, self-insured you are now, so. That's kind of the outline of what the differences are between being fully and self-insured. Any questions thus far? Now this slide, it does have some repeats of what I went over in the last one, but I broke it out a little clearer here between what's an advantage and what's a disadvantage, just to help out. So I'll just try to glaze over any ones that are repetitive. But so the advantages of being fully insured is the insurer takes on all of the risk, right? So as a self-insured plan, you would be now taking on more of the risk. So if you do have a bad claims year, it could hit into your reserves a little bit. If you have a good year though, then what that does is it helps you to keep premiums level or not have an increase as much as you should. Advantages also being fully insured carriers, the fiduciary, like we said in self-insured, you can be make them it as well. They handle all the litigation, so that's kind of an advantage on both sides. Another advantage is that you know exactly what you're paying out per month in the fully insured case. In self-insured, it's a little more question mark, how many claims are you going to have? So you can see basically it's more of administratively easy to be fully insured, but you're going to pay up by being fully insured. You're going to take in all those profits that the insurer's handing out to you. That's kind of not what we'd like you to do. So other disadvantages of being fully insured, the underwriting is more conservative, and to explain that a little better is, as I said, insurers will say, oh, you paid this amount of dollars in claims per month, but those numbers aren't what you actually paid. They're going to be, influenced by reserves that they put into there. And those reserves can actually be inflated. So even though they're saying, let's say, I'll use a classic example of the loss ratio. Loss ratios means if you have a 100% loss ratio, you paid out exactly the amount of claims as you did in premiums. However, when you're lower in loss ratios, let's say you're 90%, that means you paid out less claims than your premiums. So roughly 90% of the premiums covered all the claims. In this case, though, your loss ratio may not be truly 90%. It could be actually 85%. So the carrier maybe has taken that 5% margin to themselves because they've reported it differently. And this is just how the nature of insurance industries work. Sounds very scummy, but it's a reporting mechanism, and it's just how it works. So every insurer does this, and I'm not here to say what's right and wrong, but anyway. So that's another disadvantage you have, is the information they're giving you could be distorted. In the self-insured case, you now have access to all your claims information. You know exactly what's coming in and out. You don't have reserves built in. So that's a good thing for your district. Last of all, payer disadvantages, you pay the profit margin. I already explained that. That could be 3%. And if you're dealing with millions of dollars of claims, 3% of, what is it, between 10 and 15 million, that's a lot. So that now can go to your district. I think that just about covers most of the things that I went on with on the other slides. So we go to the next one now. So this slide right here shows you actually what the district's experience has been. So it's kind of fuzzy, but I'll just go over it real quick. On the left side, you see there's about 700 employees that you're dealing with. And you can see there's incurred claims per month on the second column for medical, drug, total. So I'll just look at the total. But basically what I want everyone to look at is the loss ratios on the right. So I was saying before, 100% means you broke even. 90% is, doing well, but basically you've been running at around 93% for 2014, 93% for 2015, and then you went to 90% for 2016. So basically you're running 10% below, meaning your premiums are covering all your costs for your claims. But you can see, as I said, those numbers actually truly could be maybe like 85%, 87%, meaning that the carrier is gaining a little bit extra, because these numbers are the ones that they've reported to us. And it has those reserves in it. So anyway, this is good news, right? Because that means that, you have relatively stable claims experience, and you kind of know what's coming at you. If you look in some of those months, though, you'll see some months are like 300,000, some months are like 1 million. So it can be all over the place, but roughly I would say your average is about 600,000. But that's the nature of self-insurance, is you will see in one month you might have to chalk up a little bit extra, but in another month it could be lower. It all depends on your plan designs and many other factors. But long story short, 90%, this is a good time to go self-insured. You're in a good spot. Because we have seen clients be at 100%, 110%, and they get into that spiral where they can't get out of it. They have to raise premiums so much that they can't catch up. Anyway, this next slide, I think, this is just the year to date. So basically we wanted to show a little bit extra data because that was just on the calendar year. Here, between the mid-year, you're still at roughly 90% from July to June 2017. And before that, the year before, it was about 89%, so it's still in a good place. Okay, so now we've actually used your specific insurance data to figure out these costs that we would expect for next year. So looking at the fully insured case, we were expecting about $12 million worth of claims, the pooling fees to be about $900,000. This is all based on the information they gave us. You can see that big orange box right there. That's the retention, meaning how much they keep. So you can just see how much bigger that box is on the left than on the right when you self-insure. We also will produce extra savings by having the flexibility to use other vendors for you. So what we're doing in the drug spaces, our group currently is pitting all the drug vendors against each other, and we're really trying to get our employers the best bang for their buck on drug coverage. So you might have savings there. With drugs also, you get to keep all drug rebates and lower your premiums with them as well. There's just many advantages to going self-insured, obviously, for what I'm saying here. But anyway, so the other difference, though, you can see is the pooling fees are much greater on the insurance side versus the self-insured side. So it's just kind of a demographic here. What's going on? This is going to be a little bit hard to look at because it's a lot of numbers and boxes. But basically on the left side is the fully insured arrangement. So I broke everything down between, where are your fees going currently versus where would they go self-insured in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So on the left side, in the fully insured case, we broke it down on a per employee per month basis in the top left column. But I would say let's just focus on the bottom one, which is the actual claims. You can see them in millions of dollars. So we're expecting about $12.4 million worth of claims. And then in terms of your retention and fees for the fully insured case, it would be about $2.2 million. So roughly adding up to about $14.7 million. So what I circled, though, in the bottom right is the amount of savings that we would expect you to have by going self-insured. So we're expecting between $1.1 and $1.4 million. And actually, we showed two cases there because we weren't sure if that healthcare reform fee was being suspended or not. And since it's going back in, we're actually thinking that the $1.46 million number right there is the more accurate one. So you're saving close to $1.5 million by going self-insured. And then over the next 2 years, you can see that number just rising because the insurer, when they give you your renewals, we're expecting much bigger renewals as of late because of the insurance market tightening a lot, because of the carriers leaving the exchanges and and there being only basically one carrier now, we think it's going to be harder and harder for insurers not to raise their premiums. So that's a big thing to be wary of. And this is also why a lot of employers, especially in New Jersey, are starting to become self-insured. So anyway, I think that just about covers it here. One thing I forgot to mention is that this was under the $300,000 stop loss level that we'd expect. So we're saying that the reinsurer will cover claims up to anything above $300,000 per person. We also broke this down between $250,000 and $200,000 because the fees do vary based on which level you pick. The lower you bring that deductible, the more it's going to cost you for reinsurance. So on the next slide, if you go with a lower one to safeguard yourself with $250,000, you can see the savings goes from, what was it, $1.46 million before to $1.356 million. So it's a $100,000 difference. Not that much in the grand scheme of things, because you're at $13 million spent. And then on the next one, you can see it goes down another $100,000. So, you know, even in any one of these cases, you're still saving between $1.2 and $1.4 million. One thing I actually forgot to mention too is that when these insurance carriers give you your renewal rates for your premiums, they use trends that are totally out of whack. We do our own trend surveys now, and we're seeing medical trends at around 5% and drug trends around 10 to 12% because of the specialty drug influx. But insurers decide to use 8% or 10%, and I've even seen up to 12% on their renewal packages because they expect it to be a little bit greater, but it's not realistic, and that's also a mechanism they use to raise your premiums. So based on your experience too, we can even track what your trends have been, and I doubt it's in that range that they're proposing. So here I just put together some data quality and risk factors. These are just kind of reiterations of what I said before, but what funding levels? Currently we're showing them 90%. I already explained this. The claim estimates that we were talking about before, they showed on incurred, you now get paid. I'm not going to go crazy over here because I think I did explain a lot of this, but these are just more pros to going self-insured. It's stop loss payment timing you have to consider, so a reinsurer may give you your money back 1 to 2 months later. So if you do have a large claim, you might have to chalk up that money right now, but you'll get it, or majority of it back later. But a lot of stop loss carriers actually pay instantly now, so that might not be a big worry. And then rebates, those, as I said, they might come a few months later. So drug rebates, they usually take about, I would say, 3 to 6 months to process. So those savings will be realized a little bit later on. So just something to not be shocked by if you do go self-insured. And then just last of all, this is our cash flow scenario. Basically what I wanted to do here was just show the basics of how self-insuring works. So here you can see we set up what is your reserve as at the beginning of the year, what's your premium, what are your claims on the incurred basis, and what are your paid claims. So what we expect for your group is for you to have 0 reserve initially, and then you collect premium for the entire group. And when you pay your claims, you can see how small that number is in the first week. It's $66,000, whereas for the month, it's usually about $1 million. So the purpose to show you this here is that, as I said, it's a trickle in, so you're paying in small amounts of claims at first, and you're collecting a big premium for the group. But what that does is it helps you build reserves to pay out those medical claims later. So actually, the other part that's a profit here is that now that you have these reserves, you can actually, I think you can invest those reserves and get some income off of it to additionally help to pay down the claims. So it's just another point here that self-insurance definitely is the way to go, because this money is now all yours, and if you have enough reserves to back it up, you should be good. I put a visual here too, just to show exactly how that's working. So you can see the reserves, the blue line, and how high it goes over the claims and the premiums. So it's just an illustration. It's basically showing the last slide that I put together in visual form. But yeah, if you have any a little bit more large claims than expected, what will happen is your reserve will be depleted a little bit, so that blue line could go below some of the other lines. And then you'll just have to chalk up a little bit extra cash. And you know, we don't expect it to be a ton. On the next slide, I show kind of the probabilities of you falling into these large claim margins. So here, under each stop loss threshold, so 200,000, 250, and 300, I showed the probability here of you going over those claims. So we expect your claims to be at $12.3 million. I'll take the top box for now. The chance of you going over that $12.3 million to 12.9 is about 25%, which isn't, it isn't a deal breaker. It's only, what, $600,000 just about. So the percentage of claims above would be about 5%. It's not a make or break scenario. So that's roughly a low end scenario. But then you can see all the way at the top, what if we expected you to go over $15 million? There's a 0.1% chance. And that's what a lot of employers get scared by. They get hung up on, oh, what if we have like $5 million claimants? The reinsurer will cover most of those. You probably have to have between 5 and 10 really large claimants to not get the bang for your buck. So it's just an illustration, probability-wise, and we used your data to do this. So anyway, does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Are there laws in effect to protect the reserve money and to regulate that and keep it safe so that if a lot of claims come in, there are issues with that it can't be used in other ways, or how is that money protected?
So that money is set aside and it's put on your books as a separate entity. So you definitely are not allowed to touch it if you do set it aside as a reserve.
But if you do, you not have to.
It's something that the auditor checks. They'll be audited on an annual basis to make sure you have your reserve funds.
But there's no law requiring that?
To hold a reserve, you actually can hold 0, or you can hold up to what we tell you to hold, which usually is about 1.25 month of claims. So it is up to you, but I think in this case, a reserve would be optimal, because you want to have enough to cover either if there are large claimants or the run out that I talked about before. Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
So just like from the perspective of an employee
Yes.
in the district, not as an employee, but would this change any of the network or the subscription practice? I know you mentioned at one point that if we were, I'm sure you have more control of the program design, so that right now each year you have to sign up for a new plan with that would change.
It would not. This is only to how you fund or how you pay for it. You would still have Blue Cross Blue Shield. All your plans are negotiated and they don't change. It's just how you are funding your claims.
Yeah, and we definitely can make sure that the carrier knows that you want to keep the network and the plan design exactly the same. Yes?
You mentioned that you may use other vendors, so
Yes.
how would that actually impact?
Well, so we can usually replicate between, I'd say, 98 to 99% of the formulary. I mean, there might be a small amount of people that would be impacted if we did carve it out. But that's a conversation probably for a few years from now. And even then, if you wanted to keep it exactly the same, you have that option to just not move. So, yeah.
And they probably didn't realize, like, if you're with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, you move from Prime Therapeutic as your RX vendor to CVS to Express Scripts. They've bounced around, and those are the carriers we're talking about. It's invisible to the employee. All the major chains are all in the network. It's usually a 99% match. You'll find maybe one local chain a difference between carriers.
So another hand up. Yes?
So if, for example,
So that would be where, since the board is self-insuring, they would need to cover the rest. But, I mean, that's the purpose of reinsurance. So, picking a lower level will speak to, a lower risk tolerance. So if you do $200,000 worth of a deductible, that's actually pretty good. And, if you had like 5 large claimants, you probably wouldn't even deplete your reserves with that much. If you went higher, you might.
Just that for a second, Chris, so just to be clear, because this is all new to a lot of people in terms of the real intricacies of the way insurance works. The way this stop loss works is there are 2 types of stop loss, which Chris is talking about here, okay? So I think, Georgiana, you were asking about large claimants, individual claimants. So it's my understanding that the individual stop loss works is to address the individual large claimants. So if we have an individual claim that's $500,000, let's say, and that's paid, okay? Because a lot of times the thing you also have to understand about the medical system, the way insurance works, is that providers will bill $500,000, various providers for services, and then Verizon, as our provider, which would still be our network provider, okay, goes in and negotiates with them. They are either in the network, and they say, because you're in the network, this is what we'll pay you for that fee, even though you built this, and they accepted it because they pre-agreed to be part of the Verizon network. Or if they aren't part of the Verizon network, Verizon still will go in and negotiate with them. And the providers are used to playing that, I will say, game, if you will, where they bill for X, and they're anticipating that they're going to settle for something less than X. That's the first thing to keep in mind about that. The second thing is, with the stop loss levels of $200,000 and $300,000, our experience, and I went back to the help of Arthur Gallagher in the last 7 years, because Horizon bills us for reinsurance, okay? They still do it themselves, okay? They reinsure, they have stop loss. Okay? It's just part of the business practice that they have in their business model. So when you look at what we as a district have paid in the last 7 years out to Horizon for reinsurance premiums, and then you look at what they have paid in excess of that $200,000 threshold, because they don't give us the flexibility. They say, you get what we give to everybody else that's in Horizon's book of business, and that's a $200,000 individual stop loss threshold. When you look at what they have had to pay out for our district relative to the premiums we've paid for the last 7 years, it's 1/10 of what we've paid them in premiums. So we're relatively low, okay? And to give you a number to put that in more perspective, we're from like $400,000 or $500,000 in excess of the $200,000 threshold over the last 7 years. That's all claims over the last 7 years, okay? $400,000 or $500,000 over 7 years, for which Horizon charged us close to $4 million in insurance premiums. Okay? So that's a little bit of background on how we, as a district, in our particular numbers, I think, don't necessarily support what we're being billed for that, and the flexibility that we don't have. I'll let Chris speak to that if he disagrees.
No, I guess I'll touch on one more point. It's, I think what you're maybe alluding to is that if you did have a lot of members go over, the purpose of aggregate stop loss, not specific, which is the individual, is if you do have your claims go above usually 25% of your expected claims, then the reinsurer will cover that as well. So aggregate stop loss is kind of that mechanism to pay anything above 25% of your expected claims. And I can personally tell you, every client I've ever dealt with, no one has ever hit that attachment point. And that's the purpose of having an actuary do your claims experience projections, is just to see where are you now, where do we expect you to be. We're usually not that far off base. So anyway, to just, while you're concerned on that, that's the purpose of aggregate stop loss. And it will cover multiple large claimants going over. Okay? Any other questions?
Board member questions? We cover board member questions first.
Just a comment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of numbers.
Yes.
Looks like a great program, but I'm going to want to study the numbers. So
Sure.
If I can call,
No problem. Yeah.
I'm going to need a while to look at it.
All right. Yes. Probably just speak to Rod, and then we'll loop you in. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, there you go.
I know there's a lot of concern about coverage.
Yes.
And when you talk about the flexibility of the self-insured plan as it relates to a state, a fully funded plan which reports to the state coverage of insurance, what are some of those things which the board has the discretion to make a decision on that the state currently does have mandates, but are any future insurance plan might change?
In terms of plan design, no?
And some of the state mandates were on air ambulance. There's things that we would never do or change plans. We're going to stick to what the state health benefits is covering. But there's many benefits that are just on a monthly basis we get where it's now required to be covered by each of those state again. Air ambulance, there's infertility mandates. It's things that you have in your benefits now that wouldn't change. When we was talking about non-union groups could decide to make changes to the plans.
Several years ago, they put in the Mental Health Parity Act, make each mental health the same as any other claimant. But it wouldn't affect any of your benefits because you're all union negotiated benefits. Rod can't change anything without the union to say so. So there would be no changes to the benefits.
Does that answer your question? No? All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Would it change anything in terms of from an employee's perspective about the particular process and stuff like that? But we pay someone to process it, like we're insured, right?
No, it wouldn't change anything because, yeah, Horizon would still be administering it if you stayed with them. Yeah, exactly. So there would be no change.
There'd be no changes to the employees at all. Benefits stay the same, networks stay the same. They'll get a different ID card with a different group number on it. The changes would come from the administration and how they pay for the things. That's really just the change.
The big difference is now you get a monthly bill. How many employees you have, and here are your rates, and they pay that monthly bill. This would be, at the end of the month, they'd say, this is how many people went to the doctor, went to the hospital, this was the actual cost, and they're going to pay those actual claims.
You pay your claims weekly, and then at the end of the month, you get an administrative bill. You have 700 people at $50 per person for the administrative expense. Here's your number. You'll pay for the pooling charges and the aggregate stop loss separately. X many people times $12, whatever it is per employee per month. And there's your bill. So you pay your bill, your expense bill once a month. You pay your claims weekly, and everything else is just the same.
So the district is the person that pays the bill. So there should not be any lag time, so the bills come in at the end of the
No, to be clear, Horizon is still going to process and pay your bills just like they do now. We pay Horizon just like we do now. It's just a different mechanism by which, one, we pay them because we would be paying them weekly, which is what we did when we had the minimum premium retrospective plan about 3 years ago. We had that type of a plan. It wasn't a fully insured prospective plan like what we have now. It's both fully insured, but one's a minimum premium where it's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of, and Chris alluded to that earlier. So we were paying weekly. So to be clear, Georgiana, the Horizon folks would continue to pay the providers directly like they do now, okay? So there's no changes in terms of how that's processed. The change is really just that we're paying them on a weekly basis and that we're paying them for actually paid claims versus the incurred claim, which is an inflated claim.
Right, exactly. And what I was saying before too is that, there still is that lag time for you to get a bill from your doctor, right? But initially when you do transition to self-insured, that's why I was showing that slide before of the graph where you're paying such a small amount initially because the insurer is still going to pay out the run out that they have to, and then you're going to just be taking in all the new claims that are coming in right away. So you're going to have very low claims right off the bat, and then it will build up to a normal range, and then, if you ever terminate the plan, then you'll have that run out to cover again. So
the amount that you're saving, that is after you're actually paying Horizon a fee for processing the claims as well, right?
Correct. Yes, that's an all-in cost.
yeah, that $1.2 to $1.4 million is basically all stemming from no profit margin from the insurer, no state taxes,
and no HCA fees. So those are the big hitters there.
Basically, it's always a good proposition for your size to go self-insured. And I just want to explain it this way. Could you lose on one given year? Yes. Out of 10 years, that'll probably be the only year you're going to lose. And here's why. If you should run horribly, you run 10% above your expected claims, and you have to pay this extra $1 million, that means you ran at 110% plus loss ratio. Horizon or any other carrier who went out to you is going to give you a 35% increase the next year. Because they're looking at your past experience over the last 12 months, and they have to forecast it. So while you may have beaten them for a year, you're not beating them or any other carrier for that next year, because they're going to whack it. So what I say is you can lose on a given year and pay more than you would have paid under a fully insured, but you're not losing again for several years.
Yeah, and to reiterate that point too, we dealt with a district that they actually decided to do this when their loss ratios were getting worse. So they started getting around that 100 to 110%, and they were now in a position where the carrier was obviously like, you know what, we're throwing 25% at you because your loss ratios are really high. So not only are they in a bad position because they either have to raise their premiums extremely, or they now have to go self-insured and take on all these larger claims. You know, it's better to do it now when you're running well at around the 90% range. So don't get caught in that kind of tight spot that they were in.
In terms of insurances, how is this going to affect when you're negotiating with a carrier person? So next year's negotiating year for the teachers union. If they decide or the board decides to go, let's say, with Peg rather than Blue Cross Blue Shield, how is that going to affect all of these types of numbers?
Basically, once you're with a carrier in this situation, you're probably not leaving, because you're talking about only the administrative fee at this point, which is, let's say, $45 or $50 per employee per month. Another carrier, even if they gave you $40 or $35, you're saving $7,000 a month or $80,000 a month on $14 million. So once you're with this carrier, unless you just really hate the carrier, you don't think they have enough discounts, and that's why you want to move. That's a different story. But on the fixed cost basis, there's almost no reason to move. It's such a small part of the whole insurance. It really all comes down to the claims. The fixed costs are very small when you're talking on the $14 million, when you're talking about $400,000. Even if they save you 10%, it's $40,000.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you're with a pretty big carrier that you know, most of our clients are pretty pleased with. Unless there was some type of communication issues on their end, or you know, you felt like you were being ripped off on the administrative side, which I mean, that's our job, is to vet that out and see if you are. That would be the only time I think we would suggest a change of carrier anyway.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the board? Okay, we're going to move on. We do have other public comment later in the meeting. If anybody wants to document another question, we can take notes then. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Thank you.
we're up to the superintendent's report. There are 4 items. May I have a motion? Jen? A second? Rhonda? Sorry.
Yes, so we have 4 items under superintendent's report. We just had a motion and a second. Just by way of explanation, we have a few standard items here. We have our school bus evacuation drills that are dated most recently for Ridge High School on November 13th. They did their school bus evacuation drills. That was today. The Berners Township Board of Ed has been asked to recognize the starting of 3 other clubs at Ridge High School. The Anti-Stigma Club, the Food Awareness Club, and the 12 Keys Club. There are also the HIB, which is item number 4. And finally, the first item is annually we have to submit our statement of assurances for our QSAC, which is the state monitoring system for school districts. On an annual basis, we have to submit statement of assurances, our basic operating procedures, policy, governance, finance, and curriculum. We also have to take care of a district performance review, but that's done every 3 years. We are not on a district performance review cycle this year. We're just on our regular statement of assurances, which is item number 1.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Byrne? Yes. Mrs. Gray? Yes. Dr. Dunn? Yes. Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richard?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Woolbridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam Vice President?
Okay, we are up to public comment on agenda items. So if you have comments, please come up, sign in with your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Okay. I don't see any, so we'll move on to the approval of minutes. May I have a motion? Dr. Dunn and Ms. McEwen. Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Dr. Dunn? Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam Vice President?
Okay, we're up to committee reports. There are 2 items for finance. Can I have a motion? Mr. Fry and Mrs. Gray. Does anyone have any questions? These are just standard items and some professional development. Pardon me? And, okay, any questions? Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Byrne? Mrs. Gray? Dr. Dunn? Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam Vice President?
Next up is Personnel Committee. Ms. McEwen, did you have anything to report?
No, we haven't had a meeting since the last report.
Okay.
There's
There are 9 items, so I need a motion. Ms. McEwen and Mrs. Gray. Okay. Are there any questions or? No? Ready for a roll call?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs.
Next up is Policy Committee report. Mr. Fry, do you have anything?
We're going to meet today, and we'll report out next week.
Okay, thank you. The next is Curriculum Committee.
Curriculum committee will be meeting on this Thursday, 16th.
Okay, thank you. Advocacy.
Advocacy minutes went out late this afternoon, and since they went out so late, I'm not going to do a report till the next meeting, but I do have 3 quick things to mention, just because they're this week. I just wanted to mention that tomorrow there's a Your Recovery Journey at 7 p.m. at the Liberty Corner Presbyterian Church, which is part of a series of 4 workshops to help develop new and healthier routines, relationships, and skills for dealing with addiction, and that is sponsored by Community in Crisis. On the 15th, LAMS is having a presentation here at 9:15 about the risks of vaping. A lot of people have been coming to the board and asking us to do a presentation about it, and this is the opportunity to see it. Hopefully people can come. And on the 16th is a standard-based report card assessment presentation at Cedar Hill at 9 a.m. at Cedar Hill in the cafeteria. And that is of particular interest to K-1 parents. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of those things going on this week. And I'll report out on the rest of the other things next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Richmond. Okay, there is no liaison report tonight. And I also wanted to mention that the ad hoc SEL committee is meeting on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. So the next item is public comments on non-agenda items. So if anyone has any topic that they want to address the board, come up and sign in with your name and address. Okay. I don't see any. So next up is board forum. Does anyone have any topics they'd like to discuss at board forum?
Or, I don't, are we allowed to congratulate the new board members that were just elected last week?
Right, we don't have final election results. Several of us were kind of trolling around today to see if we could get those to make formal announcements. We certainly have a pretty clear picture, but we'll wait to make official announcements until we get the official counts, and then we'll do that.
Any other items for board forum? No? Okay. So I guess we're up to adjournment. So can I have a motion? Dr. Dutton, second. Mrs. Korn?